This Civic Media podcast is sponsored by UW Organ and Tissue Donation. Organ donations are desperately needed, and now is the right time to become an organ donor. Talk to your family. Get the dot. Save lives. Go to heroicdeed.com.
This is your WXCO Daily News Roundup for Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 FM and 1230 AM in Wausau.
For WXCO News, I'm Brittany Merlot. We've lost a true Wisconsin original. Bob Uecker has died. He was 90 years old. The Milwaukee Brewers made the announcement yesterday. After his career on the field, he became the voice of the crew in 1971. He was on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson more than 100 times. Carson is the one who named him Mr. Baseball. He'd been battling lung cancer since 2023. And another data center site is being talked about in southeast Wisconsin. Stuart J. Waddles has more.
Microsoft is working on a $3.3 billion project in Racine County. Now there's discussion in Port Washington for a data center effort.
And with the dangerous cold spilling into the state this weekend, it's important to keep an eye on those pipes and make sure that they don't burst. One mistake people make is not having the heat high enough in your house. The thermostat needs to be set in the mid-60s at least, and even when you're not home. Crews during the past cold snap are running at full capacity with pipes already breaking. So, it's important to be prepared. Close gaps around doors and windows. Don't let drafts in. Experts suggest pipe insulation or foam. And let small drops of water drip from your faucet. It helps reduce the pressure and helps prevent freezing pipes. And if you do wind up with a frozen pipe, shut the water off and thaw it out. Space heaters are efficient, but it's important to use them safely and to make sure that they're monitored and away from flammable materials. And the Department of Transportation declares that all state highways are officially frozen, and the frozen road law will expand to include the entire state. This law allows heavier loads for trucks carrying logs, salt, and sand for winter maintenance. WSDOT and the county highway monitor temperature forecasts along with frost tubes. These are liquid-filled devices placed under the pavement, and it helps determine when the roads are adequately frozen enough to support these heavier loads. Wisconsin will now have an Office of Violence Prevention. Madison Bureau Chief Savannah Tomei-Olson has more.
Governor Tony Evers signed an executive order about a month after the shooting at Abundant Life Christian School. Gun violence is the #1 cause of death for American kids. It's been that way for 5 years now, and they're at higher risk here in Wisconsin. From 2014 to 2023, the gun death rate increased 34% in the U.S., but here it rose 54%.
As a father, grandfather, and governor, it's unthinkable that a kid and a teacher woke up, went to school that morning, never come back.
The office will work with local governments, law enforcement, nonprofits, school districts, even gun dealers to do what Evers called connecting the dots for a big picture approach to gun violence. Madison has shifted its own strategy through a partnership between police and the health department. Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway.
In 2024, our violence prevention team served over 100 people, including folks that engaged in violence, victims of violence, and people who were impacted by violence happening around them. Violence is contagious, and if you can contain it by supporting the folks that are touched, we have a chance to reduce violence in our communities.
The office will start with $10 million. That money will come from leftover funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. A big chunk of that will go into grants for local communities doing the work to keep people safer. Then Evers will include ongoing funding for the office in the state budget. He also says he'll include what he calls his most robust gun reform proposals. But with Republican control of the legislature, Evers would need some of their support. And so far, they've ignored or rejected his previous plans for gun reform.
Recreation in Wisconsin is crucial, and areas around us are struggling with accepting ATVs and UTVs on their roads. Melissa Kay has more.
The Wisconsin Rapids Public Works Committee met last week. One agenda item included discussing a request from Alderperson Madeline Plumquist on options for an ATV and UTV ordinance in the city. There was an ordinance on the ballot in November, and all but one district voted against it. Alderperson Ryan Austin, District 1, is still in support of passing an ordinance, and his district is the only one which voted for it.
As many of you know, Wisconsin Rapids is strategically positioned near one of the largest and most extensive ATV-UTV trail networks in the state. And by embracing an ordinance that allows these vehicles to legally operate on city streets, we open the door to tremendous economic opportunity.
Palmquist said the people voted against having 12 to 16-year-olds being able to drive ATVs and UTVs in the city.
That question, though, was not, do the citizens of Wisconsin Rapids want this at all?
She's in favor of drafting an ordinance that includes requiring that drivers have a license. Alderperson Dean Veneman, District 2, said that if there were to be a new ordinance, it would need to be significantly different than the one Wisconsin Rapids residents voted against.
Politics these days, 55-45 is a landslide.
Wood County Highway Commissioner Roland Hawk spoke on having ATVs and UTVs on county roads. He was initially against it, but as it proved safe, he has come around to the idea.
But the more we experienced ATVs and UTVs being on our roads, we did not see problems.
All county highways are currently open unless posted. Alderperson Madeline Palmquist made a motion to approve the drafted ordinance with an additional restriction for all operators to have a valid driver's license, as well as having staff review of the ordinance. The motion passed with everyone in favor. It will now move to the Common Council.
A law was passed in an effort to boost reading achievement for students in Wisconsin, yet funding has not been released. Jimmy Kuska has more.
Wisconsin's new reading program under Act 20 could be on its way towards being an unfunded mandate by the state legislature. $50 million is held up in the Joint Finance Committee over a disagreement between Republicans in the legislature and Governor Tony Evers on how the money should be spent. The already approved funding was tabbed for materials and training for staff at schools to implement phonics-based literacy for elementary school students. If the money isn't released by June 30th, the funds go back into the state surplus.
And without the funding, school districts have to pay for materials and training on their own. And a cranberry farmer is on a mission to restore Wisconsin wetlands, and he's doing it by building what he calls mock beaver dams. Jim Hoffman lives in Alma Center. He first got interested in this idea after helping a Nordic skiing buddy release an orphaned beaver on his property. They built an artificial beaver dam and included a stuffed teddy bear for company.
And we dropped the beaver in it. The first thing he did is swim right down the culvert and started swimming around the pond. Unfortunately, that was the last we saw of the beaver named Broadus.
Mock beaver dams, as Hoffman calls them, can pool more than 500,000 gallons of water during floods. He hopes to mimic the natural features of beaver dams by enhancing wildlife habitat, stabilizing eroded stream banks, and improving water quality. And the Merrill Ice Drags are back. After no races last year, competitors and fans' patience will finally pay off. With over a dozen cars expected to compete this weekend. Tires studded with nails, you'll be surprised how fast they can go. And celebrating 60 years of history, it roars attention on the town. The season kicks off tomorrow and continues every Saturday through the middle of February. I'm Brittany Merlot for WXCO.
The Packers fire a coach. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with Sports NFL. Although the Packers' defense improved the past year, there's been criticism they didn't put enough pressure on quarterbacks. Defensive line coach Jason Rebovich fired after 3 years in Green Bay. Meanwhile, defensive back Jair Alexander has missed nearly half the games the past 2 seasons due to injury. GM Brian Gutekunst asked, will Jair be back?
We're at the beginning stages of just kind of gathering information as a whole, before we start looking at next year and how we're going to lay this thing out.
And Bob Uecker has died after a 2-year battle with lung cancer. Uecker would have been 91 next Saturday.
He beat pancreatic cancer, which nobody beats. But he had another cancer now, and he did the job right to the end, which is extraordinary. And I kept trying to tell him to slow down, Kurt. There were days he would go have radiation treatment, then come to the ballpark and broadcast the game. It's unbelievable.
That's Brewers owner Mark Antanasio with Sports on Mike Clemens.
On your entertainment beat, I'm Pete Schwaba. Stand-up comic Bill Burr shared opinions on the catastrophic LA fires during an appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, like only Bill Burr can. After saying he was tired of people on the internet sitting at home in their underwear suddenly becoming fire experts, Burr attacked insurance companies, saying they will keep the people's premiums and give themselves bonuses, insinuating that they are the actual looters. John Cena's likability is off the charts with John Cena fans. The sometime actor, sometime wrestler will host a new talk series. Variety reports that Cena will host a 4-episode talker called What Drives You and will interview guests like Logan Paul, Jelly Roll, and Travis Barker and their favorite cars. This is a really original idea that was even more original when Jerry Seinfeld came up with it. What Drives You will air January 21st on the Roku channel. Malcolm in the Middle is putting the band back together. The crazy popular show that premiered in 2000 is ready for a reboot. Bryan Cranston and Jane Kaczmarek will return, as well as series creator and head writer Linwood Boomer. Frankie Muniz also returns as Malcolm, who is now almost 40. During the show's 151-episode run, it pulled 33 Emmy nominations. Disney announced they will make 4 episodes to start. In Oh My Gosh, it's been a few weeks since Taylor Swift has made news. She is being a supportive girlfriend. Travis Kelce has decided to continue his NFL career despite falling stat lines, and Taylor Swift says she fully supports his decision. That's the story. It's not much, folks, but a little Taylor Swift news is less depressing than other news happening around the world. Rumors are flying again that The Goonies will have a sequel 40 years after its initial release. The cast has been back and forth on said rumors, which were also in the news last September. The original Goonies said they had heard nothing concrete in regard to a remake or sequel. The Goonies follows a group of kids in a seaside town in Oregon who try to prevent developers from taking over their neighborhood. Not sure if they will have the same mission 40 years later in the remake, but they will certainly be less cute. Sticking with long overdue 1980s sequels, the Gremlins franchise will have a new chapter. Deadline.com says Warner Brothers has confirmed there will be a new film. Christopher Columbus, director of the original Gremlins, is on board, but it is unclear in what capacity. Fun fact, it was due to some of the violent scenes in Gremlins that Hollywood created the PG-13 rating. For more showbiz fun, tune into Nightlight with me, Pete Schwaba, weeknights from 6 to 8 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Windy and warmer today, mostly cloudy with some flurries or freezing drizzle later this morning into this afternoon. Our high near 35 today. Getting colder tonight, 5 above the low tomorrow, partly cloudy with a high of 10. We drop to 12 below by Sunday morning with a high of only 5 below on Sunday. I'm meteorologist Sean Cable. Outside now, it's 33.
That's your WXCO Daily News Roundup from Civic Media. Subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts. Find more news at bullfallsradio.com. The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.